You may have heard someone say there's a difference between spirits and ghosts, and there really is, but today I want to talk about it on a whole new level.
This is your moment. This is your moment in time. This is your moment. This is your moment.
A very popular topic is what is the difference between a ghost and a spirit? And I want to cover that today, but I also want to go into this with a kind of a different perspective on how to approach the difference between these two terms. Now, lots of people have covered this topic explaining that a ghost is someone that is psychotic or stuck in the in between, not even human like, not crossed over. And then spirits are individuals that crossed over to normal fashion. Some people explain ghosts as not even being human, but being almost like an energy imprint that's on repeat, like an old movie that you can watch, but not yet, not quite interact with. Whereas a spirit is an actual soul that you can have an interaction with. There's a lot of differences between the two, but in general, this is what I want to talk about today. In general, the term ghost leans toward the scary, haunting, horrifying horror movie type topic. And spirit lends itself more toward that higher connection that we all have. Now, this is a passion of mine because I've done spiritual clearings for years now. And I've been in numerous homes, numerous buildings, worked with individuals that have, attachments and different types of what pop culture would call a haunting. And I really only see two different things. I either see an individual who has passed away and is stuck in their transition to the other side, or I see an energy imprint, something that is a memory that's been left there, the energy of a memory or the energy of an experience that's been left in a certain location. So while we could identify that as ghost, identify the being crossing over as a spirit, I prefer to identify energy stuck in a space as exactly what that is, energy, not necessarily a ghost. The ghost concept takes stuck energy and anything that goes bump in the night and is woo scary, right? And turns it into this being that is a ghost. I prefer to say this is stuck energy, right? An energy imprint, you could say, or energy from an old situation that happened, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't have that conscious, direction of communication. That's an energy imprint. And then when it comes to a being that's crossing over and transitioning, even if they haven't crossed over, I still prefer the term spirit over ghost. Because in that situation, when you identify someone, and here's the key important point here, someone meaning the actual human being who has passed and is now in their death transition, when you identify them as not yet crossed over, thus they are a ghost, we're leaning toward the scary. And this limits us in so many ways. I love the phrase ghosts are people too. Like that's my go-to phrase when it comes to spirits and ghosts, because in pop culture, we've really kind of coined this term ghost, and by no one's fault, there's really no one to blame here. It's just how pop culture has kind of transformed this topic. When we think of ghosts, we think of fearful things. We think of something scary. And we also, and this is the key, this is the biggest part of this, the term ghost dehumanizes the individual that's in their transition process. Again, not by anyone's mistake or fault or blame, but when we look at an individual who's crossing over, remember, this is an actual person who has died and is going through their transition process. And we say, that's a ghost. We don't think person. We think spooky. We think scary. We think haunting. We think psychotic. We think bad, right? So I tend to lean towards saying spirit more than ghost, because ghost, I really feel strongly, dehumanizes the person that's going through their transition. Now we can talk about good and bad. I'll talk about that in a minute. But for me, it's not a difference between ghost and spirit. I just remove ghost from the equation, right? I just remove it from the equation. It's either old energy, an energy imprint, or it's a spirit. Everyone that passes and crosses over goes through their transition, and take away the judgment of good or bad, harmful, not harmful, easy transition, stuck transition. They're all spirits. Because when you hear someone say, "Oh, yeah, I communicated with a spirit," you instantly think of a person, right? You think of, oh, who was it? Was it male? Was it female? Was it, blah, 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 right? But when you hear someone say, "Oh, I communicated with a ghost," then can you think of all of those ideas that pop right up into your head when you hear that word versus spirit? It's it's again a dehumanizing of an individual, and not in like a bad, bringing them down, going up against these people or whatever, discounting them. Again, no one's at fault here. It's just a pop culture term that got really roped into a haunted movie. You don't go to a haunted movie to see spirits. You go to a haunted movie to see ghosts. That's really how it is. And when I say ghosts are people too, that's really all I mean is we need to identify them as individuals going through their transition and kind of not lose track of that. And here's why. When people experience a paranormal moment in their home, let's say, and at first it's very frightening for them. And why is that? It's because the first term that pops in is haunting. The second term that pops in is ghost, or, change those around. But the first reaction for many when they hear something or experience something that's paranormal, a sound or a movement or a shadow or something like this, we tend to go to fear. This is another piece of that pop culture that's come in. Now, I'm going to interject here for a second. I think horror movies are fun. I don't really go to a lot of them. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not a huge fan, but I love the spookiness of Halloween. I love the decorations of that. I love American Horror Story. There's a lot of things out there that are very entertaining, but we have to keep them in that box of entertainment. It's just entertainment. When we're talking about the reality of what happens with death, I prefer to eliminate that topic of ghost and stick with spirit. Now, the fear that people experience, which is very natural to have something happen that you can't see where it's coming from, right? You hear a bump in the night, or you hear somebody going up the stairs and there's no one there. We tend to go into fear. And many times, the individual that's going up the steps can very easily be a loved one from the other side, either stuck or crossed over, both of which can create this phenomenon. So I really want to open up this dialogue to say, hey, when something happens, even though, at first you might have a moment of fear, I love to invite people to stop for a second and say, okay, there's a possibility that this could also be a positive thing, or instead be a positive thing and not a negative experience, because it might be your aunt, right? It might be your grandmother. It might be, somebody on the other side trying to get your attention, to give you a loving message. And because of the ghosts and the hauntings and, pop cultures in the movies, when, by the way, again, entertainment is fabulous, but because of this, in our personal day-to-day lives, we can tend to jump onto that fear immediately. Now, I'm not saying to be ignorant and anything that you hear, you just go, oh, okay, well, that must be positive, so I'm going to assume it's positive. No, this is why I emphasize to do GCP every single day. If you don't know what GCP is, I'll give you the link in some way, shape, or form. I'll make sure you get that link. But when it comes to these moments, I invite people stop for a second and stay open to it being either negative or positive. Let's bring that positive option in there, and then reset. Just wipe the slate clean for a second and then feel what your gut is telling you. Because when we stop and take just a breath and then reset and say, okay, this just happened in my home. Yes, I was scared at first, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to just feel what I feel. You might feel overwhelming love. And then you might realize, oh, this is a positive situation. Because again, not every time a light turns off or on, or every time, you hear somebody walking down the hallway and no one's there. Not every time this happens is it a negative time. More often than not, It is a positive experience of your ancestors and your loved ones coming through from the other side to give you a message. Now, there is the occasion where it's a negative spirit. And when you stop and you reset and you give yourself a moment to kind of feel what your gut feels, you might feel something negative. And in that case, take care of it. Call someone that can help. Also, this is where I want to get into the topic of the good and the bad. I don't differentiate between good spirits and bad spirits, identifying bad spirits as ghosts. I don't do that because in the end, every single individual that lives here on earth and passes and crosses back over is someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's parent. Do you know what I mean? Everyone is love and everyone deserves to go home. I don't, subscribe to the concept of a location considered hellish. I don't subscribe to that. It doesn't make logical sense to me in the whole scheme of everything that I've experienced. I've seen here and there, and in the transition process. It's when people go through their transition process that they really face everything that happened here on earth. It's where they really face all of the things that they've done and the review that they have to walk through. And that can be a very difficult process for somebody who was particularly harmful in their life. So it's not all lollipops and butterflies crossing over. I get it for most. For most, what I was going to say is that yes, it is. It's a very easy transition. It's an incredible feeling of love and instant understanding and reconnection. And it's an automatic, like just a people mover. You just go, right, and cross over to the other side. But there are going to be individuals who have caused great damage here on earth to other people and things, etc. And they cross over, they go into their transition process, and it's a very difficult process for them because they really have to confront what it was that they experienced. Now, in this case, sometimes those individuals can become stuck in the in between on purpose, like kind of resist the whole process and not want to complete it. And in that case, they can turn their attention back to, living people on earth in order to express their frustrations. And this is where the negative spirit comes in. Again, I do not identify them as a ghost because ghosts are people too. I identify them as a negative spirit that is coming back and causing havoc or harm in the material world. Now, side note, what do you do? Right? If this comes up and you stop for a second and you sit with it and your gut says, this is not okay. This is not a good feeling energy that's in my house or my place of business. When you have that happen, you instantly put up protective walls, instantly put a bubble around yourself, bubble around your family, bubble around the house. Let that bubble push the spirit out of the home, right? Claim your space. This is what I want you to know. And please take this one in. When you are here in this material world, you are always stronger than a spirit that is not in the material world. This is your world. Okay. You are, part of the material world. They are not. So what you demand will be, meaning when a spirit comes in, you sit with it, you reset, you listen to your gut, and your gut goes, yeah, this is a negative situation. Okay. When you're in that situation, when you say with authority, you, negative spirit, out of my house, it will happen because you have command of this agreed upon reality. Now, I know that that's not what pop culture has taught us, right? Again, back to the movies, which by the way, I love, but these are storylines. These are storylines in these movies saying, oh, I couldn't get it out, couldn't get it out. And there are very rare circumstances where individuals are confronted with negative spirits and they do have to deal with that on a pretty intense level. However, we're talking a super small percentage, 0.5% of the people have had a situation like that. The majority of the case, when you say out, they're out. So that's your first step. Imagine a protective bubble around you, around your family, around your super cute, fluffy little dog, and around your house, and make the command you out. It's even better if you can assist in that individual in crossing over. If you're not comfortable doing it, find someone that can, because here's where I get back to the whole reason why I don't use the term ghosts. That person, even though they're causing harm, they're still a person. They're still a soul. And what are we striving to do anyway? We're striving to love unconditionally. And we don't have to forgive, we don't have to, accept, we don't have to do all that kind of stuff. But in the end, this is an individual, it's a person, and they're struggling. Just because a kid is throwing a temper tantrum and punching you in the face doesn't mean that that kid needs to be set aside, ignored, and isolated. It means that that kid needs somebody to show up for them. So, when it comes to spirits, let's recap here. If you have an experience where a light turns on, a music turns on, or you hear a noise in the hallway or something like that, and someone's not there, and you feel that there's a presence there, I invite you to disregard this word ghost. Stop, reset your fear if you have it, and just let your gut tell you, is this a good spirit or a bad spirit? And I don't even like those words good and bad, but so we'll say it this way, is it a spirit that has positive intentions or a spirit that has negative intentions? If you feel that it has negative intentions, bubble yourself up, bubble your house up, make your command, get out, and see if you can find somebody that can assist that spirit that is no longer in your house. If it's good, if it's that good, warm, loving feeling, that means that someone, one of your loved ones or your guides, is there trying to reach you and give you a message. And I think that's a very beautiful thing, even just to say hello, right? And then that's where you can step into using some different tools, some yes and no intuition, things like this, in order to connect with them. Or just feel the loving warmth and say, thank you. Thank you for checking in with me. In the end, it's about love. And every ghost technically is a spirit. So let's just get rid of the ghost term because it's a fear based term. And remember that ghosts are people too. And if you want to learn more about this, I have a YouTube channel that's called Other Side Chats. And it's where I share videos on what it's like as a medium to do clearings. And they're kind of fun videos to listen to. But they're also interesting because if you're doing this work or you're interested in doing this work, you can kind of get a feel for what it's really like. We have an amazing crossing over community, crossing over course if you're interested in learning on how to step into this work and do it, because it's very important work. No one really should be stuck in the in between. Everybody should be able to go home. And I think it's really valuable. So there are resources out there. Search them out. It might be exactly the support you need in stepping into this process.
This is your moment.